Microsoft, not only Microsoft, any effective licensing positions, any ELPs. You've heard the word ELP probably many times in your life, and you're probably dealing with ELPs. If you're on the customer side, if you're on the suffering, on the receiving side of this, you've probably seen this picture, not a single time in your life. Or maybe not. I hope this will benefit you as well, this thought of this morning. Do we need ELPs? ELP is not something a company needs when they start thinking about software asset management, even about their compliance. This is not the right thing if it's taken out of context. If it's just delivered as a service like this, and on the receiving side, on the customer side, there's no understanding why they need an LP. If they're not ready for an LP, it may even lead to wrong decisions. I have multiple issues with this particular form. So let's start from technical and then get to business issues with the LP. This is a Microsoft-centric form. This is the standard United Kingdom form. And it's much, much better than the one that was promoted by multiple Microsoft-related companies since around 2003, 2005, when software asset management was seen just as a one-off exercise to produce an ELP. This is a much better form. Still, as a professional here, I'm not seeing enough columns. I want, for instance, to understand if my license entitlement is something. Yes, I have it. May I use it? In certain circumstances, you may have the licenses which are unusable. If you're familiar with Microsoft Platform Commitment, if you're committed to license every desktop or every user with a platform license, then whichever licenses you have for your users or you bought previously, they're not applicable in the current context. I'm not seeing enough columns. I'm not seeing that column that says if I can use or not those licenses. And what happens is people are taught to do that, to take all the entitlement that appears on the entitlement register, whatever that is, and just drop it on an ELP. It is misleading. So that's not enough. Then the deployment. Even for desktop products, I'd like to understand if that's deployed on a physical desktop, on a virtual desktop, on the server, or if it's on a server. Is that a Citrix type of server or remote desktop server? Is that just a local deployment on the server, which is used through the admin console, because the licensing model will be different? So I'm not seeing enough fields here. But that's not the biggest problem. That is technical. This is the typical delta that will be presented in a typical ELP. If this is the only document you're getting, if this is the only result you're receiving from whomever does the ELP, isn't it misleading? What does it tell you? In my opinion, the only party that benefits from this sort of a delta, from this sort of a summary, is the vendor or a reseller. The greens that you see here, they're not green. What you see is this picture down here, a black and white picture of shortfalls and surpluses. But then the question is surplus good? And the answer is, well, I conveniently put it on top. Surplus is also red. It's not red for the vendor. They just want you to cover the shortfalls, so you pay them for those licenses. It's good that some vendors, and Microsoft included, they also reward their managers, your account managers, for adoption. So even for them, that's not a black and white picture. Even for them, if you have licenses of the current versions that are unused, is not a good thing. But this is the traditional form. If you are given this out of context, if you are buying just an ELP service that doesn't provide you business insight behind that ELP, I hope you buy not just an ELP. I hope you receive a one-off or a managed service that actually gives you proper recommendations, not just about how to cover the shortfalls, but also what to do with the surpluses. You're not getting even a half of the results. But then the other thing with the ELPs is if you're not ready for an ELP, your business is not ready, if your IT is not ready, if you don't understand why you're doing this, achieving a proper ELP in which every single aspect will be covered is not an easy task. It's almost unpredictable how long it can take. If you're given a certain time frame in which you need to produce it, say you woke up this morning with the thought that, oh, you have an enterprise agreement renewal in 3 months. Depending on your size, Even collecting data for the ELP can take up to 3 months or even longer. I've been to an exercise where to achieve full-on ELP in a large company, it would have taken a year. Because fortunately, it was decided that we need to lower the bar and actually just assess where we are. If you understand that it will take a long time to produce an ELP in your circumstances, or if you're on the delivering side in your customer circumstances, maybe you shouldn't even do an ELP. Do an ELP-like exercise. As the team I currently work for does, strategic licensing reviews. We still ask for the data from the service. We still ask for the entitlement data and other things. But the idea is, if something isn't there, if something isn't present, fine. Let's see what we can make of what we have. And in that case, if you have an enterprise agreement renewal or a true-up, that's not a good thing to perform that exercise, because you still won't get to the numbers that you need to properly right-size your renewal so you're not in the red in any way. You're not over-licensed, you're not under-licensed. But if it's not a time-constrained exercise, it's still a good idea to just assess where you are before you even jump into the ELP. You will need it one day. And when you have processes set up, when you understand your strategic position, when you've been through this exercise a few times, then ELP as a one-off, as a snapshot, is one of the moving parts of your software asset management machine. But otherwise, it's only good for the vendor. Otherwise, it doesn't really answer the question, for instance, because it's a one-off snapshot. Is it really what we need to buy? Is it going to change in 3 months from now? Are we moving to the cloud? What are we going to do with all those? If we have a surplus of Windows Server and SQL Server licenses with software assurance, is that a bad thing? Or because we move into the cloud, we're going to use them in Azure with Azure hybrid benefits and save on Azure virtual machines? Is that considered? ELP is not a simple thing. ELP out of context may even damage the business. It needs to be interpreted. It needs to be wrapped in the proper business consulting package with all things considered. This is a snapshot. We need to understand what led to this position, how to get out of it, with the consideration of what your IT is going to look like in the nearest future. In that case, an ELP is a good thing. But then again, look at the details, that you understand the metrics behind it, that you don't compare apples to oranges. So yes, I'm going back to the technical details. In the Microsoft product list, and it's a huge product list, there are 0 products that are compared on instances. And if you look at this form, what do you see here? Discovered by inventory tool, physical, and virtual. What if that product is licensed per user? Is it there? Can users be discovered by inventory tools? Does the person that does the ELP understand that, for instance, Visual Studio is licensed per named user? And there's absolutely no relation between instances of Visual Studio and how many licenses you need. It's a rookie mistake that everybody does, unfortunately. So on this question mark, because I haven't put a period here, send me a message. Let's have a proper chat about ELPs, in which we'll discuss the business value of an ELP when it's done properly. Have a good day and save with knowledge of Microsoft, and not only Microsoft, licensing and software asset management. Goodbye.